Welcome to WDEX. My time is Todd Saylor, and this is the WDEX show, the Wired Differently show. That's right. My name is Todd, and I'm the author of the book, The Brand and the Attitudinal Disorder Wired Differently. And well, my job is to love you. My job is to encourage you. My job is to motivate you. My job is to inspire you and maybe teach you a few things. I know you don't need to learn a lot all the time, but maybe I can encourage you or remind you of some things or bring some things up that make some cool differences. Maybe even tonight is a special night for that. And the show's job is to basically challenge the status quo. The show's job is to help us move out of our natural drift. The show's job is to really push us to not be out of it. And your job is relatively simple. Your job is to basically sit back, relax, enjoy the show. But most importantly, I want you to be, do, and think differently. I always want you to be, do, and think differently. That's the thing. So what we got today is a really cool show. I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. I'm going to level up with you. The show's basically got an interesting title. Racism is a noun. And I thought of this title a while back. I was doing some things that just kind of came to me as epiphany as I struggled through my own racism thought process. As I struggled through, obviously, Fox News, CNN, and a lot of things that are going on out there. And I thought, well, I have a forum. I have things. I have places, and I have people watching, and I have this ability to share things. And I thought, well, tonight I might be able to do that. I might be able to cut through some of these things that are just a little different for a lot of people. And so when I started thinking about racism for the show, I wanted to parallel racism to something that we could all relate to. Because I think racism is one of those things where we all have our own feelings of this or that. And we're all jaded by the way we were brought up. And so when I was brought up, I literally could tell you I wasn't brought up a racist. From the way we see things, we think of racism so fiery right now. As if you look at the comments that were on my show as I posted all over the country, the comments were just ruthless over one word, racism, calling to the fact that it was a common denominator and noun. But I want people to see it that way. I want you to understand we all see racism differently. And I want you to understand that this noun we can all gravitate to and understand. And so as I was growing up, my parents didn't raise me a racist. They weren't racist. Matter of fact, we couldn't be racist because I never even met a black person until I was probably 18 years old. So how could I be racist if I grew up in an all-white community? We didn't have any Spanish people. We didn't have any black people. We didn't have anything but our Caucasian race. So how could I be racist if that's all I was ever been around? And so I think that's kind of what we need to understand. It's 1965, 1970, 1972, 1973. And these are formative years for the country and changing and segregation and moving through things and Martin Luther King and all the amazing things that he did. But what I want people to understand is that more than likely you have a racist mindset in many cases. And I think that most people who push back with me on some 400 comments over my show advertisement were angry at the word racism. They didn't know me as a person. They called me names, probably because they didn't know me and they felt free. They didn't care. But the point of the matter is I did have a racism bent to me in the 70s. Even though I grew up in an all-white community, I grew up with a surrounding area of people who talked about minorities, who talked about lifestyles. They weren't bad things, but as a small child, little things grab your subconscious. So if I'm in an all-white community and I'm grabbing subconscious things or off-color jokes or difficult things in that regards or racial slants or slurs and you're 10 and you're 11 and they're bouncing off of you and they're catching and some of them are dropping into your subconscious, you're not thinking about that as a kid. So as a Caucasian white American boy growing up all around white people, how could I be racist when I wasn't around it? But you grab racism tendencies or racism mindsets and you're not aware of it. On the same token, I want you to understand that as probably a black young man, an individual, there's probably another 12-year-old black person growing up in an all African-American setting, and he's going to dinner and he's around all of his same like-minded people, and he's hearing things about white people that aren't perfectly good. And so you have two 12-year-old boys, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys growing up in completely separate communities, not influenced by anybody else but their own kind, if you will, and they're being indoctrinated into the subconscious of the way those people think. And so they grow up to be 50 years old, and they're here in the 2021s, and they're trying to figure all this thing out. Because I think what the biggest problem I had with the title of this and some of the things that people said was that racism doesn't exist. I think the problem with most people said, I'm sick of racism junk. Another white liberal will tell us of what to think. If we would stop talking about racism, it would just go away. Ignore it so it will go away. Racism only exists in a few. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, I had a lot of indifferent comments with people saying, hey, just let him talk. We don't even know what he's talking about. He's just saying racism is a noun. And I want to go back to the fact that racism is a noun because I want you all to understand that it's a common denominator. So the title of this message is Racism is a Noun, but it's a noun to overcome. And I know I have some friends probably watching and a lot of people looking at me and they're saying, well, yeah, I know you, Todd Saylor. You've done pretty well. You wrote books and you make money and you're relatively popular and you have privilege. And I do. I'm all of those things. And so why would I risk talking about certain things like this? And why would I get out in front of this and start talking about this only to grab some negative comments from even my own white friends, conservative friends? I'm a conservative. So funny thing about that, as I lean, I guess I would say I lean a little left socially, but I'm in my right mind. So you guys can figure that one out. But the bottom line is we got to get this out. We got to flush this out. So as an 11-year-old boy, I'll give you an example. I want to give you a little bit of meat here. So as an example of me as an 11-year-old boy, I had a neighbor who liberally used the N-word back in the day, but we didn't think a lot about it. We're just running around the neighborhood, this or that. And one day he asked me to help him charge his car. And he said, hey, do you know how to charge a car, Todd? I said, no, sir, I don't. He says, well, let me show you how to do this really quick. And I said, okay, I'll help you. And he says, just remember, put the positive, the red on the red, the positive, and the red on the red and the positive, both on each cars, and make sure you never cross. And you put the negative on the negative and the negative on the negative, and you have both of them so they're not opposite. Remember this, Todd. He says, red is positive, and then negative is the N-word, negative is in the N-word. That's awful. But as an 11, 10-year-old boy in a culture that you don't know any better, and it's just words flying around, it sticks. I'm 57 years old. And unfortunately, every time I have to jump a battery cable for myself or somebody else, that memory tool that he gave me sunk to my subconscious and will never leave. So take the other example, the little 10 or 11-year-old minority black child who's growing up in a community with all of the surrounding like-minded people, and he's at the dinner table, and the uncle or somebody comes to the table and he says something about white people, like, I hate white people. He did this, he did that, he did this. Well, the little 11-year-old boy, he doesn't understand all of that. He just hears what he hears, and then it drops into the subconscious. Now, I want you to know that this is a bigger message than most, but it's going to have business principles, believe it or not. But I'm going to tie it to the fact that racism is a noun. And so I got these two 11-year-old boys that are being subjected to racism conditioning, listening to these things unwittingly, not understanding what's going through their subconsciouses and settling them. And now they're 50 years old and they're dealing with these things, and they've immersed into a culture that's kind of blowing up, if you will. And all people want to do is tell me, don't talk about it, Todd. You got privilege. Don't ruin it. Don't get rid of your power. All these types of things. Why are you bringing it up? It's stupid, stupid, stupid. Well, if a guy like me is not willing to talk about it, then that just means I am repressive. That just means that I'm not willing to face that my subconscious is real and I have these thoughts. And they are racism thoughts. And my counterpart, the little African-American boy who was 11, who's probably 57 now, and he still has these thoughts and he knows they're wrong. I know they're wrong, and they keep gurgling up. And the people that say these things, my good friends, the people that say, don't talk about it, it doesn't exist, let it go away, don't bring it up, forget about it. The more we talk about it, the more we pander. That's not the truth. The truth is those people don't want to hear about it because they don't want to deal with it. That's how most people have with problems. And so I just want to get it out there tonight. I just want to talk about it. And I want to bring it all full circle because we understand that racism is a noun. So so I had a couple of people say, it was kind of funny to me. They said, well, what is, it's not a noun. I said, well, so let's talk about what a noun is. What is a noun? A noun is any member of a class of words that can function as the main subject of verbs. Example, racism just appeared. Rule number 1, it's a noun. I just proved it, right? Okay, next word. Or it's an object of verbs. Send racism away. Object of a verb. It's a noun. No disputing a noun. It's important that we understand it's a noun because we're going to build on how to deal with nouns. I'm a professional at dealing with nouns. I'm a professional at getting you what you want out of life. I know how to get what I want out of life. I know how to get any noun I want in this world. Now listen, the last judgment of racism as a noun is, and that can be plural form. Racisms have several starting originations. Me as a 10, 11-year-old boy had an origination of unwillingness, subconscious racism thoughts, mindsets. That noun was dropping big time into my subconscious early. And the young man that was in the minority household hearing things about whitey and this and that, those dropped into his subconscious and had a major impact on him. And we both grew up together in this community of whatever, carrying around subconscious racism thoughts, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with them. And I'm going to tell you, one way to not deal with them is to push them aside and say they don't exist. So the definition of racism in its face is simply this. Racism is a noun, and we can't ignore the fact that it's a noun. And I'm beating that up because at the end of this message, when we get to, I'm going to give you the way to deal with nouns. All of us, how to deal with nouns, how to get the noun that we want. The bottom line is racism is the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior. I think a lot of us run around and listen to Fox and listen to CNN, and we really don't understand what the definition of that noun or what it really is. And I think for us to really move forward in our own racist walk or our idea of confronting something, whether you're a racist or not, I think you need to acknowledge that it's out there so you can be a proponent of what other side you want it to be. If you're a proponent of keeping racism, then you need to understand what racism is so you can fight to keep racism alive and racism going. If you're against racism, that noun racism, you need to understand really what it is so you know how to attack racism around you and to do kind of maybe what I'm doing, making people aware of the jokes, of the snide remarks. I have a lot of Black friends. I have a lot of Spanish American friends. And I didn't even want to do this show after I got into it. I'll be honest with you, the Facebook messages I got, the I don't know, it was just disturbing. And then I started thinking, I mean, this is all, I mean, I'm getting this and I'm feeling this glib about it. I mean, what does it really feel like to be a Black person in a difficult situation, or a Spanish American in a difficult situation? Matter of fact, let's talk about women. One of the biggest minority groups in the planet, matter of fact, is women. You know? So I think we really need to actually dig into that a little bit. And I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on anybody. I just want everyone to understand how important it is to flush out your own racism thoughts. Whether you're a Black person, a white person, a Spanish American person, whether you're a woman or you know, somebody that feels as a minority, you need to understand that you have racist thoughts as well. But predominantly white men have racism thoughts, whether they sit there and say they don't. Particularly an older man told me once he didn't see color, and he was like 78 years old. And I'm like, wow, what do you mean you don't see color? You know, you were born in the 50s. You couldn't escape subconscious torment. I mean, I think to walk around and say, I don't see color, and all of a sudden I took a pill and I don't have racism thoughts and hide from it, isn't going to help the next generation. And so I want to push that forward, and I want to expand that narrative in regards to the way I look at things and how I'm doing things. And I'm willing to get out there and do this. So I want you to understand, today is June 17th, 2021. But in 1865, actually 1866, June 19th happened. And today's actually an extra special day. We're actually doing a broadcast on June 17th, and we're going to talk about Juneteenth. So the funny thing is, and a horrible thing is that I never understood what Juneteenth was. I thought it was actually a massacre or something like that in some other hemisphere of something or another. And I talked to a friend of mine this morning. I said, you know, June 19th is coming up. Juneteenth is coming up, and I want to tell you about it a little bit. And he said, I don't know what it is. And he's younger than me. And these younger, more woke people are supposed to know all this stuff. So I guess a lot of people, white, Black, and different, don't really understand what June 19th represents. So in 1966, the government actually passed a law that all slaves were free. June 19th, 1866. In 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation happened, and Abraham Lincoln, one of the bravest men ever to walk this damn planet. Abraham damn Lincoln, what a man he was. Think about what he threw. He didn't just get 400 nasty emails or 400 Facebook. Abraham Lincoln was murdered to free the slaves. He was murdered for freedom. He was murdered because he was doing the right thing, right? So woesy Todd, because he got some nasty email from some righty-tighties and some lefty-loosies and whatever's going on. But listen to me, man. Abraham Lincoln was a man. So June 1965, Emancipation Proclamation, Article 13, right? Freed the slaves. But see, the irony of all that was there's actually 2 states left that never freed the slaves. And they happened to be states in the Union, believe it or not. And you think the North was all the holy mollies, but they really weren't. Kentucky and Delaware, who had basically sided with the Confederates, never freed the slaves. They literally continued chattel slavery until 1966, and they were Union states. This is crazy. Chattel slavery, there's another thing about chattel. Chattel slavery is the term for the type, and there's different types of slavery, but the one I want to talk to you about right now is chattel slavery. Chattel slavery is the type of slavery that deems a slave not human. No such thing as racism. No. Stop talking about it, Todd. It'll go away. I'm just going to go live my life in my white community and do what I'm going to do and just pretend like chattel slavery never happened. Chattel slavery considered a slave property, deeming them a noun that's not human. It goes one step further. If your children were born into a chatteled slave, the child was a chatteled slave for life, deemed non-human as a noun. Just look the other way. A couple hundred years ago, never really happened. I don't want to deal with it. I know I had nothing to do with it. I know everybody on this show had nothing to do with it. But the subconscious has been peppered through time and time again of these things. So I really want to talk to you about June 19th, 1866, when it became law that all frees were emancipated legally, even in Delaware and Kentucky. And it happened in Galveston, Texas. So we want to thank Texas for that a couple hundred years ago, 250 years ago. So here's the deal. Today is June 17th, 2021, and President Joe Biden enacted the federal law today that this is a national holiday. So I think, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I didn't understand all this. I'm a little embarrassed that I'm 57 years old and have been quite accomplished in many things. And I wasn't quite aware of what chattel noun slavery was. I wasn't quite aware of these things. And so I want you to understand. I'll give you another little known fact, but about women and being in a minority crowd. Women actually had the right to vote after a black man. I mean, there is a lot of racism, secularism, discrimination about this country. I mean, blacks don't reserve the only discriminatory laws. Blacks don't reserve the only bad racism thought. Think about if you were a woman in Dubai. You can't show your face. You can't drive a car. Your property. In 2021, it's the exact same damn thing that was going on centuries ago, over centuries ago, still going on. So racism is the idea of one's own race is superior and the other. We know it. But I want to flush it out. I know. Give me the emails and whatever you want. But I think that we can turn the corner. And I want you to understand that now. And so I want to give you those facts. So here's where I want to bring the full circle to this conversation. Congratulations to President Joe Biden and a bipartisan Congress and a bipartisan Senate to pass the federal holiday Juneteenth. I think it's a tremendous thing to happen. I think it's probably something way, way long. It's almost embarrassing to think that I didn't understand and many of us didn't understand it. But hey, the slaves were emancipated in 1966. They made it a law. No more slavery. Congratulations. It should be a federal holiday, and we should all be talking about it, and we should all be celebrating it, and we should all understand it. So let's move on to this noun, racism. So what I was hoping to do as I wrap up this show is explain to you the fact that racism is indeed a noun. Racism is something that we can touch, we can taste. It's a person, place, or thing. It's a lot of evil. It's a lot of bad thoughts. And that's why the ad was decised the way it was. Racism is a noun because I just left the word float and waft out there and let people germinate their thoughts and anger or whatever it was because the word created the thoughts. I didn't create the thoughts. So if you read this ad and it created venom or thoughts or frustration with you, it's because it has a purpose. Your subconscious is boiling up with something that's bothering you about it, and I want you to attack it. Because racism is a noun. And I'm going to tell you, as the foremost leader in the world of getting what I want, you can ask my mom, you can ask my dad, I always got what I want, almost to a bad point. But the point of the matter is, in America, especially in America, you can get anything that you want in this world, any noun that you want, any person, place, or thing. I did a speech called the 5 Ds, and I'm going to go through those right now. And I'm going to tell you why I'm just a little bit shocked at my own self. I'm just a little bit shocked as I do an inventory of my multicultural friends base and how many I've hired or I haven't hired or who I hang around with or my thoughts and these are things. But what I want you to understand is I know I've rattled your mindset a little bit. And why do I drive home the noun? Why do I keep driving home the noun of racism is a noun? Because to overcome racism is the title of the show. Racism is a noun, and it is a noun to overcome. Happy Juneteenth. Happy federal holiday. But if you really have bought anything I had to say here, and you're brave enough to admit that you have racist thoughts in your head every now and then, listen, I'll confess to you right now. Now, if it's a hard racism thing, I don't think it is. But as we move through these riots and these things that are happening, this unsettled nature, I get frustrated. Like, why are you burning things down? What good's that going to do? You know? That's somewhat of a racist thought. I get angry about it. What are they trying to take from me? You know, those are the thoughts, whether you're thinking it out loud or saying it aloud or not, you need to understand. But change is occurring, and we need to embrace the good changes and understand where we can help. I mean, I know for a fact that I can, the changes are happening. I mean, I watch commercials now, and I'll be laying in bed, and all of a sudden I'll say, well, man, there's a lot of black people in these commercials. Wow. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, 1, 2, there's like 3 black people and only 1 white person in this commercial. And it goes on and on and on. And you can see how they have a Chinese person and a Spanish American person and things are changing. Are those racist thoughts? I don't know that it's a racist thought, but it's a racist mindset. It's this idea of flushing out something that's uncomfortable to me, whether I know it or not. That's the subconscious. So the power of the subconscious is a good thing, but this power of a subconscious is ultimately a bad thing, because if we're not choosing what's going into our subconscious, then bad things are floating into our subconscious. So I didn't choose for the man across the street to say, N-word is negative, N-word is negative when I was charging the battery. I didn't choose that. It just happened. And as a young man, I didn't understand the power of the subconscious. I didn't understand the flap that allowed me to push and pull things out of my subconscious to mold my mind to do the things I needed to do to become successful. So what I'm going to skip down to right now is the practical side of this message. And the practical side of this message, you can have anything you want in this world that's a noun, a person, place, or thing, if you just understand how to do it. You can have anything in this world that you want, but do you really know what you want? And so I've wrote 2 books, and I've talked about the power of the mind and how it's worked for me and how this subconscious has drove me to where I am today, and how this part. Now I really need you to hang in here, because this is the message. I'm beating the racism as a noun to the point where I want you to understand this is the money. This is the piece where I want you to convert. The power of the subconscious can get you anything you want with the 5 Ds. You can discipline your subconscious to get anything. You want that red Corvette. You want that job. I wanted the girl, my wife, Tracy. I wanted her so bad. She was a noun at that point. These are nouns, person, place, or thing. You want the job. You want the money. You want the car. You want the house. You want the success. I can help you get there. Now, this isn't a commercial for me. I'm just saying the subconscious is what drives those things for you. My black friends out there, my white friends, I want you to understand, let's talk about racism as a noun, because all of a sudden, if I know that I can get anything in this world that I want that's a noun just by the power of my subconscious and my supremely purposeful thinking, then why am I only thinking about cars? Why am I only thinking about houses? Why are those the only nouns that money and success are driving me? The noun that I should be processing through my subconscious right now is racism. If I want to overcome my own bias, my own noun, my own racism, it's just as easy as overcoming the obstacles to build my first house, to build my first company, to build my first job, to get my wife, And that wasn't easy. But the point of the matter, it's the power of the subconscious and the mindset discipline. I hope that I'm compelling, and I know I'm talking a lot, but this is important to me. I want you to understand the 5 Ds to getting anything you want in life. But you can't be successful in getting what you want in life if you don't know what it is. The most successful people in the world, including myself, know exactly what we want, and we go get it. And America applauds it. Professional football coaches leave their wives and their families to win Super Bowls, and America says, oh, he's so dedicated. You know, we do amazing things. We go to the moon and Mars like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and all these amazing entrepreneurs out there because they know what they want. And so I've been teaching, I'm a little shocked at my own self. I've been teaching people for 4 years now how to get what they want through the power of the mind and the subconscious. But never once did I relate the noun of a car, a job, a money, success, or relationships to the noun of racism. So my challenge right now as I close on this message is the 5 Ds. And here's how we're going to get rid of racism. The first thing we got to recognize that it is out there. You can read my post. You can see all these nasty things that a lot of people said. Some people said some nice things. But at the end of the day, it does exist. Juneteenth is not a joke. Black people suffered. Women have suffered. Spanish Americans have suffered. People have suffered. I've even suffered. We've all been through things. You know, racism, discrimination, oppression is real. This term of privilege is real. We're all fighting for privilege in this country. That's why we're in America. We're going to fight for privilege. I get the coupon clips. I got the Delta Sky Miles. I'm trying for privilege. We're going to reward privilege the rest of the time we're here in this country. But the bottom line is, you know, some of us wake up in the morning and we just have a little more privilege than the next guy. Someone's always going to have more power than somebody else. So get over it, America. But let's talk about our racism. Racism is a noun. So number 1, the 5 Ds to get what you want in life. And I want you all to determine right now that you want to overcome racism within yourself. You don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to raise your hand. We're not at church, but you know you're counting white basketball players on the basketball court. You know you're counting how many interesting new black people that are on our commercials. You've noticed that if you go to Spectrum or Netflix and all of a sudden there's a black genre of movies and it's at the top of the row, it's not at the bottom of the row anymore. You noticed it. Don't pretend like you didn't notice it. I noticed it. Doesn't make me a stark raving racist, but things are changing. It's not bad. But if you don't acknowledge it, it's not going to change for your children or the people around you. And you can't go along with those jokes. My dad told me a joke a long time ago. He said, son, every joke has a little truth in it. So you think about that when you start hearing these off-color jokes about your friends, your neighbors, your minority people. Every joke has a little truth in it. So get what you want in life. Dream it, decide it, detail it, draw it, and deposit it. Okay, so if I want that car, I want you to dream about that car. You say, I want that car. You dream about it. You obsess about it. You get it in your subconscious there. And then once it's there, you decide that you're really going to get the car. You don't just talk about getting the car anymore. You just say, I've been dreaming about it. Now I've decided that's going to happen in my life. So you're locking it into that subconscious just a little more. And then all of a sudden you start to detail it. You start to talk about that car. You start to talk to your friends about that car. You start to look it up in the Google and you start to say, I want the rims just like this. And I want the cloth just like this. And I'm going to have a stereo with some big kickers in the back. And it's going to have this type of engine. And you start to really detail this vehicle that you want, this noun that you want, because you've dreamed about this red car and now you've decided it's going to happen somehow. And now to make it happen, you're detailing it, and every piece of this is sinking into your subconscious. This car, I want this car so bad. It's red. Decided I'm going to get it, and it's going to have rims. It's going to have red cloth. It's going to have white detail on it. It's going to have big speakers, and it's just going to be amazing. It's going to have a retractable roof, and you've detailed it. And then you go as far now to draw it. You literally sit down and you start to actually draw this car and you write things about it in your journal. And it's funny how things start to happen. That red car starts to pop up you when you drive around the community and you see one. That red car happens to pop up if it's parking on the side of the driveway somewhere with a for sale car in it. You automatically start to have Google searches popping up because you search so many of them. They're flashing in front of you. And all of a sudden there's that car and you got that deal and you know what you want to happen. But long story short, the last D, because you've already dreamed of it, you've decided you're going to do it and you've detailed it and now you drew it. You have literally locked it purposely into your subconscious. I did that with my first house. I dreamed it. I decided I was going to build it for my family. I detailed all of the intricacies of it. And then I finally drew it. And then I took that image and I deposited it in a book in my drawer in my office. And this is the process, and it may sound silly, but I'm telling you it's worked for me, and it's worked for many, many people. The practice of loading your subconscious. You want to be a great athlete. You want to be a great person in business. You want to be in a car. You want to get the girl like I speak about in the past. But at the end of the day, that's how you get nouns. It happens. Fast forward to close. I want you to understand the 5 Ds are to get nouns. And the noun I want you to overcome is racism. I want you to start to pretend that your brain is working for you. Maybe not just pretend, start to move your mind into the portion that it's starting to dream about this action that you want to happen. You want to become a better person in thought. You want racism to be overcome in your life. These little thoughts, you want it to work in your life. You don't have to be a raving racist to want this. I mean, it's just the little things to become a better person in that regard. Then you decide that you're really going to move through this process. I've decided to flash myself up when I start to count numbers of people in commercials, and not to indulge in that process, but to stop in that process. And then I detail this idea of what it would be like not to think with a racist mindset. And then actually write down, draw, log in your log. I want to stop thinking this way. I want to do something different in this way. And then take that log and deposit it, ceremonial somewhere. But more importantly, make sure that you're depositing it into your subconscious. Because the subconscious really doesn't know good or bad. The subconscious took that bad thought that the little boy had with charging the battery, and it didn't know any better. It just stuck it in there. But now as adults, we know what we let in our subconscious and sits in there will drive how we act, feel, eat, be, do, and think. We need to stop those thoughts from poisoning our subconscious. We can't dwell in the negativity on Fox News. We can't dwell in the overrunness of the craziness on CNN and all of these things. That's driving narratives into your subconscious that are not profitable to you. So I want you to close here right now. I want you to understand, I know this has not probably been my most exciting message, but it's been good for me. I appreciate the few that you've stayed, you've been through here and you've listened, but long story short, you have anything in this world, if you just know what you want, and any noun in this world you can accomplish by dreaming it, deciding to do it, detailing it, drawing it, and depositing in your subconscious. I just want you to take those practice of 5 Ds and put it around the noun racism. You can do this. You don't have to tell anybody. You can just do it by yourself while you're watching TV, while you're reading, and pray about it. I just think this has been a great moment, and I appreciate all that you're doing, and these 5 Ds were for you. Racism is a noun that we need to overcome. Thanks for listening. Let's do this thing called life wired differently. Appreciate everybody. Until next time, Todd Saylor, the author of Wire Differently, the book, the brand, and the attitudinal disorder. Let's do this thing called life.